Howdy of you delicious people. We can be heroes, hopefully for more than one day, probably weekend, maybe a monthly issue at some point. But anyways, we can be heroes. This is a movie that I saw on Netflix. I don't know why I saw it on Netflix, but I was like, you know what? I'm already watching some other movie. How about I watch this on top of that and just be watching two things at once? And because ultimately I don't really need to really actually see this movie. This movie was one of those films where it was like a let's watch kittens and puppies for like 2 hours or an hour and a half or whatever length that this movie was. To me, like I can kind of have seen this story kind of coming from a mile away because reasonably when I immediately saw that every single hero was kind of incapacitated, I was like, well, somebody's got to step up. Somebody's got to be the next generation. And because surefire enough, we technically have this movie be a Shark Boy and Lava Girl sequel, but yet Shark Boy and Lava Girl aren't actually into the forefront of things. They're just kind of in the background. Shark Boy doesn't have one line a iota to say who of anything, any words of any such thing. And for well, because he's not actually Taylor Lautner, he's Jeffrey J. Dashna. Sure. So going on in this movie, basically it's a story of the next heroes of this city, of this big old city, and so reasonably we kind of have the weirdest superpowers, or maybe not exactly the best superpowers through most of this film, or we don't have the best superhero names in this film because most of the time I don't think it really matters. Um, to where the forefront of like the Superman-ish like character's actual name is Miracle Guy. You couldn't have come up with a like you couldn't have come up with a better name than that. Christian Slater is in this film, and I was shocked by that. We have Pedro Pascal, who is also in this film. Man, if he wasn't in Wonder Woman 1984 and The Mandalorian, now he's also in this thing. Man, I'm sure there was like Pedro is really like he's really putting in the work to do some of these movies. But when looking at this, I bet this movie came out like a year ago, or they did it like so long ago, and now they're finally pushing it out somewhere. Um, Maybe probably Pedro probably did this in some between season or whatever, because there was probably not much to really go into. So we ultimately have Miss Granada, Miss Granada uh, as seemingly the girl consistently put to the forefront in this movie, and I was like, well, I'm like, I wonder who she's gonna be. Because, yeah, everything to me was kind of like a paint by numbers kind of thing. I could really tell where this story was going. And if anything, I kind of like to me this reminded me of a Sky High or Next Avengers, and everything to me was just kind of like, oh, okay, well, I know exactly how this story is going to go, with the exception of when eventually they did their little twists and turns. But immediately when I saw that there was an alien invasion, I'm like, oh, okay, well, like, are they going to do the body snatchers like thing, or are they gonna have it to where like they've been here all along and people didn't know it, and like what's gonna happen with this story? I desperately wanted to know. So reasonably, we have it to where in a bulk of this movie we have fledgling kids who have to be teenagers or not even teenagers with attitudes, and they have to learn their powers, and they have to do it in accelerating rates. So you have it to where everybody is going to be having really lame powers within this, but when looking at it, like there is some kind of fun moments with these powers. There is some kind of fun, interesting, like combining of powers, or otherwise just there are some unique kind of things that they do compared to a lot of other stuff, which I could have appreciated when watching this movie. So, anyways, there's honestly not much to say about this movie. Like, we have to where we can be heroes. They even have to showcase the actual Wallflower song where it's like, we can be heroes for just one day. Like, yeah, it's they have to kind of showcase that Wallflower song, which ultimately I remember that Wallflower song from being used in the Keanu Reeves movie, The Replacement, or otherwise just any other kind of like movie where it's like, hey, let's use this song because we could use it almost everywhere. So, really, we have also some like superpowered characters that ended up kind of like singing their way through their power, not in a very like God, was it like Black Canary like sorts where like the sound vibrations like end up blowing people's ears out or whatever, but I think it's almost close to that at some portions. um but if anyways somebody like sings and it's just like like I like their singing, but it's the singing is so good that it hurts my ears, and I didn't really understand that at all. um but anyways, I think that's all I have to say about this in a very spoiler or non spoiler like variation. Really stretching this out. Because I think everything that I have to review today is kind of a real stretching of just trying to find words to fill time for a certain portion of things. Because a lot of these movies and shows that I'm reviewing today don't have a lot enough into them to talk for an exceedingly long amount of time. So, let's go into the spoiler variation of this movie. So, I thought that this movie was just okay. I don't think that this movie needs to be seen. I don't even think that you really even need to watch Shark Boy and Lava Girl to understand this movie. Because I didn't watch Shark Boy and Lava Girl. Because I'm like, I don't really care to watch that film. And I just so happened to watch this film just because it was on. And so I was like, man, I'll review it just to get another video out today. So, anyways, let's go into spoiler time. Spoiler time. It's about that time to spoil this movie. So, we can be heroes. So, in the very early iteration of this movie, we have Miracle Guy. That is such a stupid name. We have Miracle Guy, who is ultimately going out into space, and he is seeing a planet, or he's seeing a spaceship coming from outer space, and he's going to take a selfie and send a tweet and a number of other things. But it seems that Miracle Guy ends up getting to be completely just overpowered by this planetary ship. We also have Christian Slater, that is Techno, that is seemingly up in the air, and he ultimately is telling Miracle Guy that he's going to run out of juice soon. So I'm like, okay, well, then are you going to just fall out of the sky and then die then? Shouldn't you have figured out that your energy is running out and that you should just, like, call it a day? Huh? So, they ultimately have it to where this spaceship ends up coming on down, and we have to where every single superhero has to step in. Shark Boy, Lava Girl, Miss Vox, who I believe is a girl that sings her way into taking things down. So all these superheroes are getting together, blinding fast. Ultimately, kind of a Flash-esque like character that can run really quickly or do things really quickly, uh, and so on and so forth. So reasonably, we have all these people quickly incapacitated, and they are all taken. They are all Leslie Nielsen, or yeah, uh, Leslie Nielsen. Yeah, they are all taken over a certain set of skills of time and such. So you ultimately have all of the kid superheroes that are like, oh my god, my mom or dad has been taken. What should I do? I don't know what I'm gonna do. And so, reasonably, we have it to where it seems that we have Miss Granada, who ultimately is seemingly a part of the heroes, and she has this like hero um like kind of, what is it called, like the stand thing in front of her, to where she's just kind of like report what's going on. But then we find out that not only the president but her herself are aliens, and they've taken control of this world. And so reasonably, I'm like, yeah, of course she's going to be the villain of the story, because I knew that all along, that she was going to be the villain of this story. So we have to have it to where the kiddies, where all the kids are going to have to combat and otherwise try to save their parents, all while their parents are basically watching what their kids are doing through some telly in their room. All the while rooting on their kids, because ultimately they have nothing better to do, because heaven forbid they try to escape. Miracle Guy tries to keep punching through a wall, but that doesn't make any sense to do anything, because ultimately, no matter how strong he is, he won't be able to break through this wall. We ultimately have a blinding fast that ultimately, like, dude, I already tried that. And so, easily everybody's like, boo hoo for me. We ultimately have Pedro Pascal, who ultimately plays Marcus Moreno, and ultimately he is doing a defense to attack these aliens as well. It seems that he's the leader of this hero squad of sorts, and ultimately he gets taken as well. And recently, it seems like this guy, I believe, is probably at some point going to be probably losing his power at some point soon. But anyway, so pushing on, we have all these kids that get onto this on this spaceship, and they're like, you know what, we should probably just use our powers. So basically, the whole entire crux of this thing is that these kids all end up getting taken, and so reasonably they all end up getting taken like their mothers and fathers. And so reasonably, we have Guppy, who is Vivian Blair, who ultimately evidently is the son of Shark, or the daughter of Shark Boy. And so reasonably, she's just like, man, I need some water, because ultimately I can use my powers. And so really, we have it to where the we ultimately have it to where Missy is seemingly the leader of, or quasi leader of, this whole group. And so reasonably, we have it to where Missy is like, yeah, I don't think we're ever gonna get out of here. I don't think there's any way out. I don't think we're gonna be able to do anything. And so I think we're all gonna have to be really, really sad now. I don't think there's any way out of this. As Missy is now like having a seizure with her eyes, where she's kind of like winking at people, like, hey, yeah, 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 like, hey, you know what I mean? We're sad. We're sad now. We're sad. We're really sad. So we have to where all the kids are, yeah, they're like, yeah, I am really sad. I am so sad that we're all just feeling defeated right now. And so all the kids, like some of the kids just start crying as they wink to one another. And so some of the kids are crying, they're boo-hooing away, and we find out that Guppy is going to steal their tears to use her power. I'm like, this has got to be the goofiest thing I've ever seen in my life. The power of tears, folks. The power of tears. So Guppy ends up bizarrely making a key to get out of this room. Because we had Miss Granada that ultimately was taking all their water from them so they can't get a little drink, a little slurp of any nourishment. And so we have to where Guppy makes a key to unlock themselves from this place. And so now they have to go out and try to save their Perantos. We have it to where, seemingly, we have Facemaker and Wildcard who end up separating themselves from the team. Because ultimately, Wildcard is trying to control his power, trying to control power. And so, reasonably, he ends up going away with Facemaker, and then him and Facemaker end up having a conundrum where they end up separating. So we have it to where Miss Granada is like, oh my god, that wild card kid? I think we need that wild card kid, because when looking at it, like, he can probably just annihilate all the other people purely by accident because his powers aren't under control yet. So it's like, I want me some of that wild card. So we have it to where all the kids are fledglingly making their way to ultimately just having to forcibly beat up more alien people. And so we have to where, like, I thought it was kind of funny to have the one slow-mo kid. I thought that was kind of fun. We also have a character named Rewind that every time somebody says something good to him, he has to rewind it over and over and over for them to repetitiously keep saying it. But evidently we also have a girl also named Fast Forward, and eventually Rewind and Fast Forward are going to combine their things together because they're like Wonder Twins activate, and ultimately trying to be able to use their powers to their benefit of sorts. So anyways, we have it to where it seems that Guppy ends up taking her powers to the next level, to where she ultimately has to put sunglasses on and then open her mouth really wide and ultimately tell us that she has some beast mode of sorts. Because ultimately we also have the character who is named Wheels, who has to kind of like, he needs Noodle to stretch out so that way he can do a chin up on Noodles, to where the wheels or his wheelchair can go and smash into bowling style a bunch of aliens and so on and so forth. So we reasonably have a lot of time with these, like, kind of fledgling characters are using their powers. Like Noodles ends up using his power to be able to end up like helping a lot of the superpower people like do stuff and or things. We have Noodles at some point helping Wheels, I think, get up a flight of stairs or something like that. Anyways, pushing on. So we have it to where these people are repetitiously using their powers, and I was just kind of like, okay, so, like, what is going to be the grand finale? What is going to be the big battle? And I don't think there ever really was a big battle going on in this movie. It just kind of comes on to be just like, hey, let's just, like, consistently have guys in suits battling these heroes. And, like, at a lot of points we have it to where that's all this movie really is. It's just security guys that are ultimately going to be the villains. And so reasonably, there's one point where Guppy is like flipping like a guy like 3 to 4 times her size, but really it's probably just him flipping backwards and stuff like that. a lot of that is kind of going on. So reasonably, it's just like security guys fighting it out with heroes with absolutely no superhero suits on. So reasonably pushing on to we have like I think Wheels is kind of like the super genius of this whole thing. He's kind of quasi Xavier because he has like the intelligence without the telekinesis power. So it seems like he's kind of like the smarts of this team, and ultimately, Guppy is going to the point of being concerned that rationally that she is unable to still have water to use her power, but Wheels ultimately mentions that there is some pyramid thing that is made of liquid metal. I'm like, oh, so are we going to make a Terminator out of this? So we have it to where Guppy ends up using this liquid metal to make a entire shark out of this liquid metal, and so ultimately she ends up attacking people with this. I'm like, okay, that's actually kind of smart or kind of cool. I like the kind of usage of Guppy because I think she's kind of out of everybody, like her powers are interesting, and so on and so forth. Really, for anybody else, I kind of really don't care. I think Slow-Mo is kind of a funny character to use. But other than that, anyways, so pushing on, we have to seemingly where Rewind and Fast Forward are combining their powers to seemingly charge up Slow-Mo, to where Slow-Mo is going to be able to use his powers a lot better, and he's going to be a lot quicker to the point to where even while Blinding Fast is ultimately watching his son, he's like, hey, did you guys catch that? And did you catch what my son did? And Miracle Guy is like, man, he was even moving way too fast even for me to see. Like, high five. So we ultimately have Rewind and Fast Forward combining their powers to evidently make someone else faster. So eventually we have it to where there's some interesting battles going on here. But then it's pushing on to have Miss Granada and the president and all of everybody else just kind of coming in and just be like, yeah, we're the villains, just to let you know. So we have to where seemingly the kids have to ultimately figure out what exactly is in this pyramid thing that ultimately they took all the liquid metal out off of, and so they end up unlocking whatever this room is to find out that every single one of the heroes were all in this room, and so reasonably it seems that the kid heroes have unlocked their parents and their dads and their whoever mothers, brothers, sisters, uncles. And so reasonably the aliens are just like, "Hey, you did it. You completed your goal. Good for you." Like, I'm going to tell you that the entire time we were working with you and like trying to excel your training because reasonably we came to this planet to help heroes like you to excel your powers. And I'm like, oh my god, so they have to kind of do the cheesy ending where it's not like a big fight out at the end. The resolution is just the fact that the aliens were helping them out the entire time without their full fledged knowledge. And that ultimately their parents were just kind of watching on to root for their kids, that ultimately knowing full well that they were part of this whole plan. And so we had Pedro's character, the Mandalorian character, that was like, yeah, he was like, I should get kidnapped more often. And I'm like, okay, sure. So we had it to where everybody's like high-fiving and they're like, yeah, we helped you. We did it. And good, you're all like more efficient superheroes. Because ultimately we had it to where Miss Granada is obtaining Wildcard, and we find out that Wildcard is not actually Wildcard, it's Facemaker, and so ultimately Wildcard does come in there, and he uses every single one of his powers to take down all these alien characters. He transforms into a bowling ball, or he ultimately has a freezing gun and all kinds of other cool weaponry stuff, which kind of was on the movie for a very brief amount of time. And so I thought that that was really cool, and we have it to where like Wildcard is using some of his powers to help out some of the other teammates like Slow Mo and all kinds of other people. But yeah, reasonably and or rationally, I like this movie. There was something like kind of corny about it, but I've kind of seen other kind of corny superhero movies. Like Spaghetti Man was kind of a funny but cheap movie. Um, Ultimately, I've seen kind of like superhero movie was kind of like a parody off of like superhero films, and I thought it was kind of like a which also the guy who plays the president in this movie, I'm like, oh yeah, I know him from superhero movie, and so recently it was kind of weird to see him here. But anyways, like superhero movie is much more of like a Spider-Man movie parody, and I thought that that was kind of fun. Um, but yeah, so recently, I guess when looking at it, I could probably go and check out Shark Boy and Lava Girl, but I'm just like, nah. I don't think I needed to watch that movie to understand this. And plus, yeah, like you get like the kind of like the Spy Kids 3D kind of vibe out of these movies, uh, and I think that's all that really needs to be said about that. It's just kind of like you get like the cheesy, uh, you get kind of a cheesiness going on here. Here's the thing that I thought was goofy. So the kids never actually get their own superhero suits. Really, what ends up happening is that they end up just kind of getting like Ghostbuster esh like suits. They kind of get like they all get like jumpsuits to just tell us, hey, yeah, guys, they're superheroes. But I'm like, you couldn't have given them like superhero suits. You have to just give them jumpsuits that just tell people who they are. So I'm like, dude, like, and they look like severely super generic jumpsuits. That kind of sucks. But ultimately, when looking at it, this movie wouldn't have spent the money for kids being in their super suits for a very limited time. And knowing full well that Sky High didn't exactly give um, much of any of the kids actually their super suits either, and so on and so forth. And basically, a lot of the superhero suits in Sky High didn't exactly have suits either. So going into this, yeah, it was kind of lame for them to just kind of get a jumpsuit at the very end of this. And recently, you just have it to where, hey guys, just let you know exactly who parents were of who. Like, yeah, it's like we had Miss Fox who had the kid a cappella, where ultimately we have her kind of singing along through this movie at some portions because evidently a cappella can't help but not sing at portions of this movie. And I was like, okay, I guess that's a interesting power, but again, it just like it's not like it's again, it's the cheesy cornballiness of like of any kind of like kids movie or every single childish like film that goes out of the way to say that they were a thing once. So when looking at this, I think that's all I needed to say about this movie. When tailoring back, yeah, Darren Fact, this is a movie that I saw once, but it was like I love superhero films. I enjoy them, but recently I always like the one hero kind of thing. I don't like usually team up kind of films. Hence why like I don't really like X-Men all that much. Like I think Avengers is only really good just because of the big scale battles that they end up putting together. Uh, but yeah, but I like individual stories that are ultimately just having a world putting around it. And so, reasonably, I think that's all I need to say about this movie. I'm going to get out of here. Bye, everybody. Bye, everybody.